Hello and welcome to my second countdown video. Even though the Ace Attorney series is one of my favourites, I've not made all that many videos about it at all. I guess it's because, due to the nature of the games, they don't have much replay value. Once you've finished them, there isn't any reason to play them again really. But regardless, the first and probably only time I'll play an Ace Attorney case is, for the most part, an exhilarating experience filled with mystery, excitement and epic breakdowns. For this video, we're taking a look at the top 10 Ace Attorney cases. Now before we start, these are all my own personal choices, so if you don't agree with me, that's fine, just don't be an ass about it, okay? Also, I have to give a spoiler warning here. I'm going to discuss many key plot points to each of my favourite cases throughout this list. Anyway, let's start. What better way to start the top 10 than with the first case in the series, the first turnabout? Larry Butts has been accused of murdering his girlfriend Cindy Stone, and it's up to rookie defense lawyer Phoenix Wright to defend his friend in his first case. When I first heard about the concept for this series, I thought it was a weird idea to say the least. How exactly would a game set in a courtroom possibly be exciting or fun to play? But it sounded interesting nonetheless. I eventually decided to give it a go, and let me tell you, this was the perfect way to be introduced to Ace Attorney. It is by far the easiest and shortest case in the entire series. Frank Sawyer is the most hopeless witness/murderer of all time, but when you're just starting out, he's exactly the sort of opponent you want to deal with. But even so, this incredibly short case is still tense when you haven't got used to the series yet, or got the art of safe scumming down. But seriously, what is the point of losing and having to play the whole trial again? I know exactly what I'll have to do to get to the same point again. If safe scumming in these games makes me a cheater, then declare me guilty and lock away the key. But I digress. Once I'd finished the trial, I knew I was in for something special. The first turnabout instantly turned me into an Ace Attorney fan for life. But as iconic as it may be, it's simply too simplistic and short for me to rate it any higher than 10th place on my favourites list. The Stolen Turnabout from Trials and Tribulations. The Karain sacred urn has been stolen, and Ron Delight has been accused of being the thief. The mask's demask. It's up to you as Phoenix Wright to prove his innocence. At first, this appears to be the only case in the series where you aren't defending someone from a murder accusation, but halfway through, you prove that Ron couldn't have stolen the urn because he was somewhere else entirely, where a murder took place at that same time. Whoops, and just when you thought the trial was over. But honestly, as grim as the situation gets at times, after Phoenix Wright's previous case from 7 months earlier, it feels like a particularly tame episode of Scooby-Doo in comparison. It's a good old-fashioned Ace Attorney case with Maya, the best assistant, by your side once again, and after what happened in that case, just seeing her again with her sense of humour and positive outlook unchanged from those events was a joy to witness. Detective Look At Me is obviously the culprit. I mean, just look at him. But that doesn't make him any less of a formidable opponent. Ace Attorney is full of arrogant villains that are very satisfying to defeat, and he is no exception. I dare say that if Phoenix had to take this guy on in his first case, he wouldn't have stood a chance. But now, in his 3rd year as a lawyer and many amazing victories under his belt, I felt confident he, or to be more accurate I, would triumph. It is also the first time you clash with Godot, this game's main prosecutor. He's alright, I suppose. He does his job well, but I find his coffee obsession tedious and his hatred of Phoenix irrational and annoying. If I had to place him on a prosecutor list, he would be, just about the halfway point, I suppose. But he doesn't spoil this case or any of the others in the game. Stolen Turnabout is the point where I felt most attached to Phoenix and Maya's adventures together and wished they would never end. Things just had to change, didn't they? I'm not much of a fan of Apollo Justice. It's not because I don't like most of its cast, but I still miss the old regulars like Maya, Gumshoe and Edgeworth. Apollo was alright, but he felt like an inferior version of Phoenix. Trucy is my second favourite assistant, so I have no problem with her. I'm not crazy about Clavier, but it is refreshing to have a less antagonistic prosecutor around. My main problem with the game was with the cases themselves. Case 2 is boring as hell, Case 3 was ridiculous, and the fourth case was confusing and just not satisfying enough for a finale at all. But having said that, there was one case in the game that I did like. In fact, I enjoyed it so much, it's the 8th entry on this list, Turnabout Trump. The opening case of Apollo Justice is easily my favourite from the game. It's Apollo's first case, and the defendant is none other than the legendary Phoenix Wright. However, he's not quite how we remember him. We eventually learn that he had his badge taken from him 7 years earlier, and he now appears to be a much less righteous person than he used to be. He's drinking more, taking part in card games, and playing piano badly. This isn't the same Phoenix we remember, but could he really go so far as to murder someone? Well, no. In fact, it's thanks to Phoenix's help that Apollo is able to prove to the court that the murderer is Christoph Gavin, Apollo's boss. But at the end of the case, you're left wondering if he really took down the right man. And since Gavin is actually on the box, I knew that his story wasn't quite over yet. I mean, it's not like Winston Payne's ever going to be important enough to appear on the front cover, is he? Turnabout Trump is far more complex than what I had come to expect from first cases at this time, and it actually ties in with the game's finale. If this is the quality the rest of the cases had to offer, then we were in for a treat. What a shame they couldn't live up to my expectations, but regardless, it doesn't alter the fact that this is my favourite first case in the series. We are back to Trials and Tribulations for its fourth case, Turnabout Beginnings. This is the first case of Phoenix's mentor, Miofei. Yes, another character's first case makes it onto the list. There's no reason behind this, it's just a coincidence. Confusingly, this case takes place a few months before the first case of the game. The defendant for this trial is Terry Fawkes, an escaped prison convict who's been accused of murdering a police detective named Valerie Hawthorne. Uh-oh, that already doesn't sound good, and worse than that, the prosecutor is Edgeworth. Jeez! Even Phoenix's luck is better than this. This is pre-character development Edgeworth as well, and he's behaving almost exactly like another certain someone who may or may not be appearing in this video later. While investigations can be a good way to unwind from the drama in the courtroom and help you picture the murder scene better, they can definitely get a bit tiresome from time to time, so it's a welcome change of pace to have a late game case without any and just get to the juicy bits in the trial straight away. And the moment I saw that the police detective's surname was Hawthorne, the same as that utter bitch Dahlia from the game's first case, I knew that this was going to be an intense trial. It soon becomes clear that Dahlia murdered her own sister, but this is something you are unable to prove when the trial ends in a tragic manner. Grr, Dahlia has to pay for this. Oh yeah, that's right, I already got the better of her in the first trial. Silly me. It's one of the darkest cases in the series, a chance to see extra ruthless Edgeworth again, and it's not bogged down by any slow investigations at a time when they may be wearing thin. I actually liked it more than Trials and Tribulations' last case. Perhaps my expectations for the finale of the original Phoenix Wright trilogy were too high, but I thought it was disappointing. Oh yeah, now things are getting serious. I've decided to count Dual Destinies Case 4 and 5 as one for this entry since they pretty much are the same case anyway. Dual Destinies is a real hit and miss game for me. The first case is good, but I could barely concentrate on the second and third cases because they were so dull, but the Cosmic Turnabout and Turnabout for Tomorrow more than made up for it. Apollo's old friend Clay Terran, who became an astronaut, was murdered during a space mission, and it's your job to defend his mentor Salomon Starbuck. Sounds straightforward enough so far, but then it is Ace Attorney. It becomes much more dramatic when Apollo leaves the Write Everything agency, forcing Phoenix to take over the case. And just when Starbuck's name is cleared, the newly surfaced evidence incriminates Athena Sykes, the newest attorney of the Write Everything agency, as Clay's murderer. Oh, but it gets worse. You see, Athena's mother used to work at the same space centre, but she was murdered 7 years ago. The main prosecutor of this game, Simon Blackquill, was found guilty of this murder and has been in prison ever since. I'm not entirely sure why a prisoner is allowed to be a prosecutor, but what do I know about law? However, Athena begins to wonder if it was actually her that accidentally killed her mother. I tell you, when the Magnus Hammer showed that Athena had a 5 black Cyclops secret, I was freaked out. The last time these appeared in the series, they were completely unbreakable, and obviously the killer's murder secret. Could Athena really have done it? Also, Simon Blackquill is set to be executed for the murder tomorrow, and if Phoenix proves he's innocent, Athena might be found guilty of the crime instead. Ah, what a dilemma this is. I don't even like Athena normally, and I felt bad for her here. On the bright side, because Blackquill obviously can't prosecute against himself, someone else has to take his place, and it's none other than Edgeworth, now the chief prosecutor. Eventually, it's revealed that Athena's mother was murdered by a mysterious character known only as the Phantom, a dangerous spy who doesn't feel emotions like most people do. Oh boy, when I realised who the Phantom actually was, I reacted in exactly the same way that Phoenix did. Even my pupils disappeared in that same way. I didn't even think that was possible in real life. I should probably get that checked actually. Oh, poor Bobby Fulbright. I feel so bad for him. Throughout the rest of the game, I found him, or rather his personality, annoying, and I just wish Gumshoe would come back. But he didn't deserve to die and have his identity stolen. But then again, rather him than Gumshoe. I don't think I could have handled that. Actually, I wonder if they would ever kill off a long-running character. It would be a terrible experience, sure, but it could make for some fantastic drama. Phew, such an eventful case, and it's topped off with one of the greatest breakdowns of all time. And while there are other final cases that I still enjoyed more, it's still worthy enough to earn 6th place on my list. We are back to the first game with its second case, Turnabout Sisters. After instantly hooking me with the first case, I couldn't wait to see how the later cases would top it, and I was not disappointed. Phoenix's mentor is murdered in Fay & Co. law offices. Yikes! We're barely anywhere into this series, and someone as important as her has already been killed off. This game pulls no punches at all. We're also introduced to many of our favourite characters like Detective Gumshoe and Maya, who is your defendant for the trial. This is the first of many times that Phoenix will have to save her, but I'd go to hell and back for that girl. So already the stakes are much higher than they were in the first Turnabout, and worse yet, Edgeworth makes his first appearance as an incredibly ruthless prosecutor. He is far more devious than Winston Payne, and he has yet to lose a case in his career. The training wheels are well and truly off now, but things go from bad to worse at the end of the second day when the real killer, Red White, accuses Phoenix himself as Mia's killer, forcing our favourite attorney since Lionel Hutz to defend himself in court. Red White is the first villain in the series that literally made me punch my DS screen, and I wanted nothing more than to wipe that smirk off his face. He's been using his company to blackmail loads of powerful figures in order to control them. He even has power over the chief prosecutor, and of course, as you see from the opening cutscene, he murdered Mia because she came a little too close to discovering his dodgy dealings. The Ace Attorney series has some of the greatest villains in all media, let alone video games. After finishing this case, I honestly wondered how they could create someone more powerful than Red White, a man with control over the law itself. Man, the series has proved me wrong about that so many times now I've lost count. He seems small fry now compared to some of the other bastards I've taken down since. A real classic case and the beginning of the greatest video game duo ever. But I don't think I could bear to go through it again now. Seeing Phoenix and Maya on murder charge is bad enough, but seeing evil Edgeworth as the one to try and get them sent down is just too much. But it doesn't change the fact that this is my 5th favourite case in the series. And now we have an entry from the recently released Spirit of Justice. Poor Apollo Justice. Even during his own game, he has always been in Phoenix's shadow and has never been given the time to shine. But now, Apollo has finally gotten his revenge on Phoenix, stealing the spotlight from his game, and done the same to his boss with Spirit of Justice. Oh, so that's why they call it that. During the final case of the game, you aren't playing as Phoenix, you are playing as Apollo. At the end, I no longer considered Apollo as a younger and inferior version of Phoenix. He has well and truly grown into a fantastic character in his own right. It's like that time Tails defended Station Square from Robotnik by himself in Sonic Adventure. I feel so proud of him. We finally get more of an insight into his past life, something that should have happened a long time ago. He goes on an adventure with his adoptive father into the Courtroom Mountains, which turns into perhaps the most intense and frightening investigation scene yet. I almost started to wonder if I were in danger of getting a bad ending. But nothing can prepare you for the horror you'll face when the first trial of the case arrives, when you discover that your opponent is none other than Phoenix Wright himself. Oh my goodness, I never thought I'd see this day. It felt so wrong to see him on the other side of the room. I mean, I practically feel like I am Phoenix, and it felt even weirder to actually enjoy seeing him squirm. So this is why prosecutors love getting under his skin. But he has his reasons for going against you, and when this part of the case is over, things only escalate further when Apollo and company find themselves in Courtroom and the fate of the country's future hangs in the balance. Phoenix has taken down some big name monsters in his time, but Apollo may have just stolen his crown. The final villain's breakdown is perhaps the most awesome and equally hilarious thing I have ever seen. I laughed, I cried, but I mostly laughed. But okay, I laughed 100% of the time. There's very little of Nayuta on the prosecutor's bench, and that's a good thing in my book, because he has to be my least favourite in the series to date. If you thought Godot was repetitive, wait until you see this guy. Now, the only complaint I may have about this case is that there is a little too much spirit channeling throughout. I could understand perfectly if someone absolutely hated the spirit channeling that occurs in these games. Heck, even a part of me gets uncomfortable about supernatural powers actually having a place in an otherwise realistic world. Yes, I know these plots can get far-fetched, but most of them could happen in our world, probably. But even so, I became so absorbed in the story and the twists that I stopped caring about it and just had an amazing time with this amazing case. Turnabout Revolution is my 4th favourite case. It's quite bizarre. When I played the first Miles Edgeworth Investigations game, I had a great time with it, but I thought about it and I realised that I didn't really like any of its cases that much. Perhaps when you don't know the mystery to some cases, they seem more fun than they actually are, or perhaps having Edgeworth as the main character and Gumshoe as assistant for a lot of it, please go away Kay, was enough to carry the entire game for me. But never mind, because I definitely liked its sequel a lot more. Damn it. Why, oh why was it never officially released to the West? Now, third cases have a bit of a reputation for being the worst in their respective games. Stuff like Turnabout Samurai and Turnabout Circus are hated by many fans, though I personally didn't mind them that much. But there's one third case that I enjoyed so much it's made it all the way to 3rd place on my list, funny enough. It's The Inherited Turnabouts from Investigations 2. If you've ever wondered exactly what happened that led to Gregory Edgeworth's murder and the DL6 incident, and admit it, you have, well this is the case just for you. It starts as a flashback where you actually get to control Edgeworth's father. What more needs to be said? That alone sold the case for me. Oh okay, I guess that's not the only reason. Back in December 2000, Gregory, along with his assistant Raymond Shields, were investigating a murder that happened during a dessert contest hosted by TV chef Jeff Masters, who was the suspect. Unfortunately, he was wrongly found guilty and Gregory was murdered after the trial. But fast forward 18 years and it's now time for Miles Edgeworth to reopen his old wounds and find the real culprit, hence the name of the case. You might think that this case is only here to finally answer all the questions we've had about the events surrounding Gregory's murder, but it also ties in very nicely with the rest of Investigation 2's story, although you won't realise it just yet. I love how this case begins with a happy and sweet song from Masters' TV show, but you'll later discover a dead body that has been frozen for 18 years and put on display as a statue, and no one even realised. Geez, that's dark even for this series' standards. You think that might be the real reason why this game was released to the West? But I don't have the evidence to prove that, do I? I don't know. I suspect a lot of people will disagree with me placing this one so high, but I just had so much fun with it. There's nothing I hate more than mysteries that are forever left unresolved in stories. Looking at you, 1999 Castlevania game that should exist, so I might be a little biased towards it. But hey, that's not a crime, is it? And just missing out on the #1 spot is the first game's original final case, Turnabout Goodbyes. I'm just going to make it clear that I don't care much for Rise from the Ashes. It was ridiculously long and overstayed its welcome to the point that I got sick to death of it long before the end. I also thought that the first day was the least enjoyable part of the whole series, even after so many sequels. No, Turnabout Goodbyes is the far superior end to the game and will always be one of the finest cases in the series. Edgeworth has been nothing but a thorn in your side for the last 2 cases, but now he finds himself accused of a crime, with his chances of being acquitted being extremely low. How ironic. However, Phoenix looks past these encounters with Edgeworth in the courtroom and decides to be his lawyer for the case. Clearly Phoenix isn't a man to bear a grudge, but it seems there's another reason why he believes in Edgeworth. But if Edgeworth isn't the prosecutor for the trial, then who is? Well, oh dear, it happens to be Edgeworth's mentor, Manfred von Karma. If you thought Edgeworth was a nightmare to deal with, then you ain't seen nothing yet. Edgeworth describes von Karma as 20 times more ruthless than even himself, and in his 40-year-long career, he hasn't lost a single case. Oh no. And you'll quickly find out that he lives up to his reputation 100%. Von Karma is the most ruthless, sneaky and smart opponent I've ever had the pleasure/displeasure to clash with. He will do anything to win his trials, and he won't show you even the tiniest bit of mercy. Oh, how I long for the days of Winston Payne again. You spend the entire case scraping for every morsel of a contradiction, with Von Karma breathing down your neck all the way. There's never been anyone to get under Phoenix's skin in such a way. At one point, your only hope of winning is to cross-examine a parrot. Later on, it's revealed why Phoenix became a defense lawyer in the first place. Back in school, Phoenix was friends with both Edgeworth and Larry, but one day he was accused of stealing Edgeworth's lunch money and the class had a mock trial about it. With everyone standing against him, Phoenix was feeling alone and scared. But then Edgeworth stepped in, acting as a defense lawyer for Phoenix. This experience made Phoenix want to defend others that felt like he did at that time, which is why he chose to become a lawyer later on. And now, 15 years later, Phoenix is repaying Edgeworth by becoming his defense in an actual, deadly serious murder case. How touching! Edgeworth originally wanted to be a defense attorney like his father, but when he was murdered in what became known as the DL6 incident, he now wanted to see every criminal sent down for their crimes, so he decided to become a prosecutor instead and had Von Karma as his mentor. But it turns out that Von Karma was in fact Gregory's murderer, which Phoenix is able to prove to the court and get the legendary prosecutor sent down for the crime on the day before the case would have been closed forever. To finally see Von Karma sweat after 3 grueling days of his crap was just... oh, there are no words to describe it. So let's recap. Phoenix Wright, who has been an attorney for just 4 months, gives Von Karma his first and last defeat in 40 years, gets him sent down for a crime in just a nick of time, and frees Edgeworth of the demons that have plagued him for 15 years. Just epic! Turnabout Goodbyes may be second place on this list, but it's an extremely close second. The perfect finale of the first chapter of the Ace Attorney saga. How could they possibly top this? Well, they managed it somehow with Farewell My Turnabout. If you saw Creepy Bad Ending 36, you would have already known that this is my favourite case of the lot. 2.5 years later, and I still stand by that. Justice for All is seen by many as the weakest of the Phoenix Wright trilogy, but most agree that its final case is one of, if not, the best case in the series. It begins when Phoenix, Maya and Pearl at the Gatewater Imperial Hotel to watch the Hero of Heroes Grand Prix ceremony, where the actor of the Nickel Samurai, Matt Engard, wins the contest. However, this happy occasion is cut short when Guan Corrida, a rival of Matt Engard, is murdered, with Engard becoming the main suspect. But it gets a whole lot worse when Maya is called away for a phone call, and later Phoenix receives a message from a professional assassin known as Shelly the Killer, who has kidnapped Maya. He says he's holding her for ransom, and if Phoenix wants to see her again, he'll have to defend Engard in court. If he gets a guilty verdict, the killer will kill Maya. When Phoenix visits Engard in the detention centre, the Magatama reveals that he isn't the killer. Phew, that's a relief, but this is no time to relax. Maya's in serious trouble. This is when I truly realised how much I cared about her. I got so involved in saving her, I couldn't stop worrying the whole time. Even during the investigation scenes, I could feel the pressure. But as the case progresses, things don't get any easier, they just get worse and worse. Guan's assistant, Adrian Andrews, appeared to have a grudge against him and starts to look like the main suspect, but are things really that simple? And on the second day, it's revealed that Guan was murdered by an assassin, namely the killer. The question is, who was he working for? Well, all the evidence seems to point at Matt Engard. Has Phoenix been forced to defend someone that would order a death? No, surely not. Sorry, but the answer is yes. Engard is nothing but a total uber bastard supreme. There's a part of me that even to this day wishes it weren't so, but yes, he is. It's at this point that Phoenix begins to doubt his entire career. Can he really go through with helping a guilty man get acquitted to save Maya? During the final trial, Phoenix is forced to prolong the trial so Maya can be saved and Engard can then be sent down with the guilty verdict he so richly deserves. It is the most intense part of the entire series, and considering the competition, that's saying something. You'll find yourself walking the tightrope between defending Engard but not going too far in case Adrian Andrews is sent down for the crime instead. Every decision I made felt wrong. I started to wonder if the trial had multiple paths to take. Like, if I presented certain evidence too early or too late, I wouldn't be able to get the good ending later in the trial. And speaking of multiple endings, yes, this case does indeed have them, but the crucial moment comes at the end. Get it wrong and you'll witness perhaps the most depressing end ever, but get it right and the happy end will make you cry tears of joy. The moment I could finally turn my back on Engard and let him know that I wouldn't be defending him anymore was the most satisfying feeling ever. Phoenix has finally lost the case, but I bet he couldn't be happy about it, and I'm more than happy to declare, farewell my turnabout, guilty of being my favourite case ever. And that's the end of the video. See you later.